how many of his saints? 10 thousands of his saints. That is you and I, who Moses is carving out right now. The tables of stone, taken up to heaven. God writes his law on us, and we come back with Christ to rule and reign with him for how long? 10 times 10 times 10 is 1,000. This Bible is absolutely amazing. And the second time the commandments come down, Israel says, all that thou saidest we'll live by, we'll believe. They accept him the second time. The rocks, remember the 2 rocks? The first rock was smitten. Christ was smitten, Isaiah chapter 53. And when he was smitten, water came forth out of the rock. Water's salvation. How did Ishmael get saved? Water. The water of life, freely. It's the Bible, it's the gospel. What happened the second time? The rock was supposed to be spoken, but Moses smote the rock, and therefore Moses was not allowed to go into the promised land. The law cannot carry you into Canaan land. The law cannot deliver you and show you heaven. It cannot carry you across Jordan's river into the promised land. The law cannot. That's why Moses was not allowed. So when Moses died, did Israel say, well, we can't go? What happened? God raised up Joshua. Okay? The second time. Let's see here. Let me move on. Moreover, brethren, I would not that you should be ignorant how that all our fathers were under the cloud and all passed through the sea, and were all baptized unto Moses in the cloud and the sea, and did all eat the same spiritual meat, did all drink the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. Now watch this. Numbers chapter 20, verse 12. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron, because ye believe me not, to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this congregation into the land which I have given them. The law cannot carry you into the promised land. In Numbers 27, the Lord said unto Moses, take thee Joshua the son of Nun, a man in whom is the Spirit, and lay thine hand upon him, and set him before Eleazar the priest and for all the congregation, and give him a charge in their sight, and thou shalt put some of thine honor upon him, that all the congregation of the children of Israel may be obedient. Joshua is the one who leads them into the promised land, not Moses. You see how it works? The first one can't. The second one will. I love it. Beautiful. Let's look at the story of Ruth. Ruth is a Gentile bride. You study this out, and I'm going to kind of move forward because we got pulled pork downstairs. Quit with your amen. You amen all that spiritual stuff, and I say food. Amen! Let's go! Woo! Are you yet carnal? Now listen to this now. I'm just going to tell you the story. You study this out. I'm telling you, you go back and read Ruth and you'll shout. Naomi, her husband died. Let me go back now and tell you about God being betrothed to Israel. God was betrothed to Israel, but had not been consummated. But betrothal was the same as marriage. And God was betrothed to Israel, and Israel hated her husband. And so he wrote her a bill of divorcement and put her away. God did. God divorced Israel. And did you know, according to the law, that God cannot marry Israel again? It's forbidden in the law. Romans chapter 7 says, know ye not that the law hath dominion over a man so long as he liveth? And that a woman who is married to a man, if he writes her a bill of divorcement and she's divorced from him, she cannot go back by the law and marry that same man again. But now if that man dies, she's free to marry again. So God, her first husband, died. Think of Nabal in 1 Samuel 25. Nabal, whose heart turned to stone for 10 days, he's the law, and she's married to the law, and he's cruel to her, and he doesn't love her, and he dies. Now she's free to marry the shepherd. So here's Naomi, and her husband's dead, and she has 2 sons, the law, the 2 tablets, and they both die. And now Naomi does not have a man to give her the inheritance. The land will be, the inheritance is now lost because there's not a man to claim that land. And for Israel right now, that land, notice that for 2,000 years, that even though they're in it, did you know that Israel does not have control over Jerusalem right now? It's divided among the Gentiles, being trodden underfoot the Gentiles right now. And they cannot claim the inheritance because her husband's dead. The law's dead to them. But she has one Gentile bride who loves her and one that hates her. The one that hates her is the one who worships other gods. That's Roman Catholicism and Mormonism and Jehovah's Witnessism and every other quote-unquote Christian group that hates Israel and forsakes her. You think about that. But here's Ruth now who says, whither thou goest, I'll go. And our hearts will be one together. And so here's Ruth, the Gentile bride, who loves Israel and says, I'm not going to leave you. I'm always going to be there for you. And if I can, I'm going to, if I get a baby, I'm going to give you my child. So Ruth marries the Redeemer. She marries the Redeemer. And she has a child. And she takes that child, Obed, and she gives him to Naomi. And say, now here's the inheritor of your promise. Now, Naomi, your seed will live. Isn't that beautiful? God has not forsaken his promise to the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He has not. Listen, I want to tell you something. I wouldn't serve a God who broke his promise to Israel. Because if he can break his promise to the natural branch, who am I? Boy, I love this. Have I got any place else to go here? David and his son. It was in the heart of David, my father, to build a house. This is what Solomon said. David represents Christ, the first coming, because Christ at his first coming conquered all the enemies. And Christ at his first coming had blood on his hands. Isn't that beautiful? He had blood on his hands, and he was the warrior, and God would not allow Christ at his first coming to rebuild the temple. So look at what he told David. The Lord said unto David, my father, where it is thine heart to build an house unto my name. Thou didst well that it was in thine heart. Nevertheless, thou shalt not build the house, but thy son that shall come forth out of thy loins, he shall build the house unto my name. Where did Jesus come from? The loins of David. He is the son of David who is going to build the house of Israel and the house of God in Israel in the latter days. Let me show you another one very quickly. David wanted to bring the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem. You remember that? He wanted to bring the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem. And so he did it on an ox cart being pulled by two oxes. That's against the law. You see, David was trying to bring the salvation to Israel by breaking the law. Can't do it. The law must be fulfilled. So how is it? Does anybody in here know how the ark is to be transported? Of how many priests? Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. It's right there, people. 4. Bearing on their shoulders the burden of the sins of Israel. That's the 4 Gospels. So when David tries to bring it up the first time, there's a breach. It's called Perez Uzzah, because Uzzah stretched forth his hand to steady the ark, and God killed him. Because when you try to bring in salvation any other way through another gospel, there's death. So then, watch this. They set the ark of God upon a new cart. Let me go past this. And when they came to Nachon's threshing floor, Uzzah put forth his hand of the ark and took hold of it, for the oxen shook it, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and God smote him there for his error, and he died by the ark of God. So that David would not remove the ark of the Lord unto him into the city of David, but David carried it aside into the house of who? Obed-Edom, a Gentile. Now the ark is in the house of the Gentile, and the ark of the Lord continued in the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite 3 months, and the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all his household. Amen. Blessing, remember, is salvation. And the Gentiles, because they had the mercy seat of Almighty God and access to the mercy seat, God blessed them, and God blessed the Gentiles all the while the ark was with the Gentiles. And David said, now it's time. Now we're going to do it right. So David went and brought up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom into the city of David with gladness. And then notice this. And so it was that when they that bare the ark had gone 6 paces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 days since Adam, 6,000 years, he sacrificed oxen and fatlings, and David danced before the Lord with all his might. David was girded with a linen ephod, and David and all the house of Israel brought up the ark of the Lord with what? Shouting and the sound of the trumpet. That's the rapture. The translation. So when God removes the Gentiles because he's done with them, he restores his mercy seat to Israel in Jerusalem. Then look at David. David reigned in Hebron 7 years and 6 months, and in Jerusalem 30 and 3 years. So Jesus came to Israel, and he was the king of the Jews for 33 and a half years. Because he was born, where's he that is born king of the Jews? And when he died 33 and a half years later, this is the king of the Jews. What's left? 7 years. 7 years. 7 times. 70 weeks. It's all those sevens in the Bible are pointing you to how God is going to forgive the sins of his people Israel. When you go read Daniel chapter 9 concerning the 70 weeks, there are 7 things that God said he was going to do with Israel. And it all had to do with the forgiveness of their sins. Go count it. It's all there in the scriptures. Okay? The scepter shall not depart. I want to show you this. Who knows what Shiloh is? Shiloh was the first capital of Israel. It's where the Ark of the Covenant was. Now you're fixing to have a spell here in a minute. A happy one. Shiloh was the first place where God put his name. And because of the wickedness of Israel, God destroyed Shiloh. That's where the Ark of the Covenant was when David went to go get it. But then David brings the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem with shoutings and the trumpet. You follow me so far? The word Shiloh is mentioned exactly 33 times in the King James Bible. Shiloh is Christ's first coming. You follow me? That's his first coming. And God destroyed it. But he's coming again.